So I'm sitting in the minute clinic, wanting to climb all over this broad next to me like a tree. Because even the perfect specimen of Sierra rodentia, like myself, falls victim to the cold and flu season. There I am, getting ready to ask her if she wants to touch my nuts. Those are acorns. I'm talking about these nuts over here. Hello, ladies. And just as I think I'm about to close this deal and show her why they call it the minute clinic, this happened.
Really was dog whistle for welfare. For the 100th time, there are more white Americans on welfare. For the 100th time, African American women are the most educated. Dog whistle. For the 100th time.
Dog whistle. For the 100th time. Dog whistle.
As my fuzzy little old Farquaad retreated into my cock quiver, I knew I couldn't keep my rage shriveled up too, and I felt something growing inside of me. Then I got angry about the show. And I knew I had to make my voice heard. The one dissenting opinion, shattering the fragile-shelled echo chambers of social norms, rising above the flames of ineptitude. And no shit, I nodded off smoking again, didn't I? You want to blow on this there, Toots? This episode of The View was obviously aired the day after Trump made his wall speech. I would have done this sooner, but I just made bail. Just for context, here's the part of the speech they showed in its entirety.
There is a growing humanitarian and security crisis at our southern border. Among those hardest hit are African Americans and Hispanic Americans. As part of an overall approach to border security, law enforcement professionals have requested $5.7 billion for a physical barrier. At the request of Democrats, it will be a steel barrier rather than a concrete wall. This barrier is absolutely critical to border security.
So the fact checkers had a field day with some of these. But what are your takeaways from it?
Well, first of all, the Democrats never gave him any kind of a wall. No steel, no concrete, no straw, no nothing.
No beaded wall.
Yeah. So that's a lie right there. I don't know why he.
Well, he was saying that, like, Chuck Schumer, for example, did vote for this barrier.
Okay, so what she's talking about, and what I believe Trump may have been referring to, is the Secure Fence Act of 2006, where the Bush administration pushed for $1.4 billion for 700 miles of fencing. And yes, Chuck Schumer signed it, Hillary Clinton signed it, and then Senator Barack Obama signed it. But he wouldn't be on that vote. So, why the change of heart? It's simple, and it's been said many times before, and I'll echo it now, that Democrats hate Trump more than they love this country. Defying Trump and shooting down anything he tries to do takes precedent over illegal aliens defying our laws and shooting down our citizens.
The Democrats also agreed to an actual wall last January in exchange for the Dreamers.
So why didn't they give it to them?
Why
didn't they do it
actually,
then?
the president pulled out. I thought he made a mistake in that moment and pulled out of it, and now here we are.
I don't think he made a mistake at all. And it's no great mystery why Trump turned this deal down, joyless. And it's actually a very smart move politically. At the time that the DACA for the wall deal was on the table, that being March of 2018, Trump was between 85% to 90% approval rating among fellow party members. And among them, only about 60% approved for the building of the wall. In contrast to that, some of the most vocal forces in the Republican Party, such as Fox News, Breitbart, and most of the more steadfast conservative members of Congress, are vehemently opposed to DACA. So, if pushing to get this wall built meant signing a bill that included a DACA stipulation, the backlash from this group would likely be very considerable and could be a detriment to his approval rating. Just not worth it for him, especially if he can get it done without that.
I'm just saying, watching this last night, it's really uncomfortable, and this is why he doesn't like to do these. He didn't want to do that
But you know what?
last night.
Nancy and Chuck looked like they were being held hostage also.
Yeah, actually, very funny observation right there, and very true. Pelosi and Schumer have been compared to everything from Ma and Pa Kettle to the aliens from They Live. I see them more like this, but I think it was because of Chucky's slightly sagging right eye there. Holy shit.
You know, when he started out with it, he said, he said it strains public resources and drives down jobs and wages. Among those hardest hit are African Americans and Hispanic Americans. So as an African American and a Hispanic American, that for me really was really dog whistle, because what it meant was straining public resources is oftentimes dog whistle for welfare. And for the 100th time, there are more white Americans on welfare than there are Black Americans and Hispanic Americans. So that racial trope thrown in there right at the beginning was very offensive to me. And the sort of, it drives these, undocumented immigrants, drives down jobs and wages.
You're Black and Hispanic? Well, if you can't swim, how'd you get across the border? Oh, that's right. I got your racial trope right here. Jesus, lady. Just say, here's my double victim card. My nigga. Beaners. Doo-da. Doo-da. I'm Black and Hispanic, so that makes me a pro. Way to assume that he's talking about welfare there, lady. I believe dog whistle is just a way to blame someone else for your awful assumptions and try to deflect the fact that you're batshit crazy, delusional, and paranoid about something. Illegal immigration costs taxpayers about $18.5 billion in Medicaid alone a year. I'd call that a strain. The Bureau of Labor Statistics estimates close to 8 million jobs are dependent upon illegal immigrants, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. And while the statement about them competing for the same jobs is very difficult to make any definitive claims about, either pro or con, it is true that when immigrants move into an area, there may be a depression of wages. While that is the more often than not scenario, there can also be an increase too, so meh. Economist Tom Smith from the Bureau of Labor Statistics says that there is very little evidence to support that Blacks and Hispanics are, and I quote, holding these particular jobs in the areas that immigrants are moving into. However, it is worth noting that about 6 in 10 adult Black males have a high school diploma or less and are disproportionately employed in the low-skilled labor market, which would put them in disproportionate competition with immigrants. As far as there being more whites on welfare than Blacks, that's true, because for the 100th time, there's more of us. Like 56% more of us! So, yes, that's true. Who's the fact-checking math wizard janitor that scribbled that solution on a chalkboard for you there, Goodwill Hunting, huh? Jesus. However, when taking those pesky population percentages into consideration, the numbers are about the same. There's like a 1% difference. But then, she goes and says this.
For the 100th time, African American women are the most educated in the United States of America, and so we aren't taking those jobs. We're taking much higher earning jobs, and so I think when he started out this speech with these dog whistle politics, I just thought, so here you go again as the divider in chief.
Right.
Oh, for the love of Benji, where do we even start with this one? This is one of those fallacies that gets regurgitated time and time again, like the gender pay gap, and just will not die. Like the claims that without African Americans we would literally have nothing because they invented everything. Well, I'll start with the obvious, and the fact that she completely glosses over African American men in her statement, because many of them are competing for those jobs. That aside, among their demographic and compared to the 6 in 10 adult Black males I just mentioned with a high school diploma or less, yes, they are the most educated. However, that is true with women across the board, with a national average of 72% of female students who graduate, compared with 65% of males. All of this, by the way, coming from the National Center for Educational Statistics. Facts. And the following I will be reading from an article in Family Inequality, link in the description. So, just as with high school diplomas, the same is also true with higher education. In the 2009-2010 academic year, Black women received a higher percentage of degrees within their race/ethnic group than did women in any other group. For example, of all the MA degrees awarded to Black students, Black women got 71% of them. In comparison, white women only got 62% of all white MA degrees. For Black women to be the most educated group, they would have to have more degrees per person than other groups do. In fact, although a greater percentage of black women have degrees than black men do, they have less education on average than white women, white men, Asian Pacific Islander women, and Asian Pacific Islander men, with Asian Pacific Islander men being the most educated group. And is that really a surprise to anyone, especially when it comes to PhDs? Holy shit, look at that! Asians! So, who really is the great divider here? Because it seems to me that after 8 years of having a black man, some might say two, in the White House, race relations are the worst they've been in almost 50 years. And why are Democrats so against the wall? There used to be a time when they were 100% balls to the wall, no pun intended, for border security. That can be summed up in 4 words.
Families who enter our country the right way and play by the rules watch others flout the rules.
People who enter the United States without our permission are illegal aliens, and illegal aliens should not be treated the same as people who entered the U.S. legally.
And because we live in an age where terrorists are challenging our borders, we cannot allow people to pour into the U.S. undetected, undocumented, and unchecked.
We've got to do several things, and I am, adamantly against illegal immigrants. Certainly, we've got to do more at our borders.
And we're working to make sure that we have sufficient facilities to detain, house, and process them appropriately. And it is unlikely that their children will be able to stay.
The President's decision to end DACA was heartless and it was brainless. Hundreds of thousands of families will be ripped apart.
Meanwhile, what's happening to families at the border is horrific. This is a moral and humanitarian crisis.
Ben Shapiro put it best by saying that they basically wind up shooting themselves in the foot by proving that a wall works every time they attempt to prove that we don't need a wall. Jim, look at my serious journalist face, Acosta, went down to the border to point out how quiet it is and that there's stores and a Burger King.
And here are some of the steel slats that the president's been talking about right here. As you can see, yes, you can see through these slats to the other side of the U.S.-Mexico border. But as we're walking along here, we're not seeing any kind of imminent danger. There are no migrants trying to rush toward this fence here in the McAllen, Texas area. As a matter of fact, there are some other businesses behind me along this highway. There's a gas station, Burger King, and so on. But no sign of the national emergency that the president has been talking about. As a matter of fact, it's pretty tranquil down here.
Wow, that is some serious journalism in there. Jim, no one is bum rushing me, therefore the borders are safe. Acosta stood on a quarter acre of land in a 2,000-mile stretch for 20 minutes and has determined that the border is safe. Sleep well, citizen! California Congressman Juan Vargas,
really, Centurion, I'm surprised to hear a man like you rattled by a rabble of rowdy rebels,
also pointed out how close San Diego is to the border and that it's paradise.
I live along the border. I'm about, a little over 10 miles from the border. It's San Diego. I mean, it's basically paradise. It's one of the safest places in the country. And the notion that we have a crisis there, security crisis, is absolute nonsense.
Yeah, because there's a fucking war there! And look at that thing! The whole city of San Diego is a gated fucking community. A gate that continues even when the land ends.
But the notion that somehow we're insecure, I mean, I have 2 daughters, I have a wife, I come to D.C., I flew, from San Diego today. I can tell you, they are safe. They are safe in San Diego, much safer than they would be here in D.C.
Go to any area with no wall and tell me what you see. Probably a fucking desert with some rocks, brittle brush, palo verde, a various assortment of cacti, and the charred remains of dead bodies and dismembered torsos stuffed into oil drums. But these are the counter-arguments they're making for not funding this wall. Burger King's on the border, San Diego is nice, and, well, they'll just tunnel under it. Seriously, that's what Nancy Pelosi's reason is for not wanting to protect our borders. They'll just Stephen McQueen it right over the fucking barbed wire. Zoom!
Squirrel, the doctor will see you now.
Well, alright there, Squeezels, that's me. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe. That would be freaking awesome! Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about border security, dog whistles, and should we at least build walls around our border town Burger Kings? You can also reach me at Squeezle, Central Park East. That's free over here! And, oh shit, I need to see a vet, don't I? I need a tow truck first, I guess. Hey, Toots, let me use your phone.
Faster than a speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Able to leap tall buildings at a single bound.
Hey, the fuck is that?
It's a baby!
It's a beach ball! It's Super-Dim! Yes, it's Super-Dim, strange visitor from a cable news network who came to Washington with questions and opinions far beyond the babble of abnormal men. Super-Dim, who can overpower White House interns, bend Bic softfield medium ballpoint pens about 14 degrees, and who, disguised as Jim Acosta, show reporter for the left-wing media, fights a never-ending battle for Orange Man Bad, and the Orange Man Bad.
We've scanned his super huge head and have determined that either his head is indeed super huge or his brain is incredibly small. In fact, we're pretty sure that his brain is nothing more than a piece of radioactive cauliflower. He also has no spine.
A trade deficit with Mexico of $58 billion a year. And that doesn't include all the drugs that are pouring across and destroying our country. And the wall just got 10 feet taller, believe me. It's got 10 feet taller.